Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton at Big C Sports. Coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the number one network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the number one sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners and Latin America, also across the pond, and London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free, in the home of the brave, on a beautiful July the 17th, 2020. Rondo Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, I guess you have to say it's scary and horrific down here in the South, as well as it is the rest of the United States. We have crossed the threshold of 78,000 positive coronavirus 19 tests today in America, the largest number in the history of America, Charlton. But I want to say thank you to those frontline healthcare workers, the nurses, the doctors, the first responders who go out and battle this horrific disease every day.
We're going to give them our big thanks, and I really appreciate it. Today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. When you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars all around the world. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports also on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV, Big C, or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, I really appreciate pausing. Pausing's good. I'm going to start doing that more, but I never want to pause on the Veterans Crisis Line. They are experienced in helping veterans and their loved ones get help. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Charlton is needed more now than ever as we think about the 22 veterans who commit suicide on average every day in America, Charlton. During this crisis pandemic that we have, think about the number of veterans that we've lost during this pandemic to COVID-19. So our veterans have gotten lost in all these numbers that are going around in the U.S. We give out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number every day, Charlton, because we know that it may help save some veterans' lives and even some private citizens' lives, Charlton, because our teenagers are committing suicide at a horrific rate. Also, with all the pressures that are going on from this pandemic of COVID-19, Charlton, there's a lot more stress put on society every day. People struggling, trying to figure out how to make ends meet at the end of the day. And so a lot of them have come to this horrific end. But if we keep giving out this number, Charlton, hopefully many more will start joining in helping out these veterans in this cause.
You got to keep hope alive. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255 to get some help. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can get some help. Really appreciate people that reach out to our veterans. Also very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants and the Say Hey Kid. Just tell them Big C sent you. Also expanding throughout Northern California. Coming up on the fall. Really looking forward to that. The goal is simple. Recruit 100 real estate brokers. Put their property listings on TV just like McDonald's does it. Car dealerships do it. Sports teams do it. And you can watch TV work for your real estate. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624 for those of you looking for opportunities in real estate. Go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com, and you can see opportunities also. And I really appreciate just a lot of good things that are happening. Even in the world of COVID-19, a lot of people are still making plans on getting business going, especially once we're out of the wilderness with the virus that's been dealing with a lot of people. I also want to make sure that I was telling you, Big C, Spotify is signing Joe Rogan to a major contract coming up on the fall of 2020. And also Big C Sports can now be heard on Spotify as well. And looking forward to having our show compared to Joe Rogan, Big C. $100 million is not a bad thing to be compared with, but growth is always a good thing, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, everybody hopes for growth in whatever type of business that they get into, Charlton. You don't want to stay stagnant. You always want to be able to expand and be compared against your competitors.
Yeah, always looking forward to that, and I really appreciate the way things are growing. You know, I don't want to pause on what we talked about yesterday, because I want to make sure that at least going into the weekend that people have the chance to just do some self-reflection. I know the NFL, the league is looking into taking some action against the Washington Redskins, and as we know right now, 15 sexual assault allegations, and there's word that there may be even more out there as women become emboldened to not keep hiding behind the secret or the shame that they may feel. But given this culture of the NFL, Big C, we've seen this before. What can the league do, and what example could they actually get from President Trump? He's also the city of Washington, D.C. Big C, your thoughts?
What could the league do? The league could force him to sell his organization, Charlton, but this has been going on and complicit amongst the other owners in the NFL for over a decade with Daniel Snyder, Charlton. When you think of some of the egregious acts that this organization has done against women in their employment. I mean, you can go back to 2013 in the Dominican Republic when they took the cheerleaders down for a photo shoot. They forced several of these cheerleaders, Charlton, to photograph topless.
Really?
They also had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. After doing this, they allowed luxury box holders, Charlton, people who own luxury boxes in FedEx Field, that were invited down during the same program, to go around and view these topless cheerleaders.
Really?
That's sexual assault, Charlton. I don't care how you want to slice it. Not only after that, Charlton, they had to escort some of these be escorts for these luxury box holders at an event that evening. So when you think about the Washington Redskins and Daniel Snyder, Charlton, this organization has been pimping out the women that have worked within this organization for years. And you think that other NFL owners have not known it? This stuff was made public, Charlton. And you think about this. Every time that a player in the NFL gets accused of sexual assault, what's the first thing that the NFL does? They suspend the player and they do an investigation.
After the fact, yeah.
So why have there not been a suspension of Daniel Snyder over the past decade? Because these incidents have gone back all the way back to 2008 with all these allegations streaming around against the Washington Redskins. Now, you think about it. Since 2008, that's 12 years, okay? 12 years.
Yeah.
And you're going to tell me that nobody in the NFL brass, as well as other owners, have not been privy to this when the media has consistently printed it out, Charlton?
Yeah. You know, that's a shame, but it's always an allegation is an allegation. Now, I was asking.
Well, what about when you have photographs? Is photographs an allegation? Because they went on the photo shoot. These women reported these atrocities that were being put upon them, Charlton. And this is not the single incident that has occurred. We can say allegation, but there's been documented proof for over a decade of the systematic torture of these women within the Washington Redskins organization.
Yeah, and okay, let's say there's maybe somebody photoshopped the photo. I have no idea. With technology, it's amazing.
It wasn't Photoshop. It's documented.
Yeah, well, we know that's why they call them allegations, Big C. But I want to ask you, and I'm serious when I ask you this, because being in the nation's capital, it's a slippery slope, Big C. There's 32 teams that make up the NFL. It's an oligarchy of power. They don't allow anybody else in. And last I've heard, that say birds of a feather flock together, if it's existing, if that attitude is permeating one franchise, chances are it permeates every franchise. So when you can hire someone to do the investigation against yourself, chances are you're not going to find much evidence of any wrongdoing, Big. So your thoughts?
Well, didn't you talk about that incident yesterday with the New Orleans Saints? That's what was complicit in that organization down there, Charlton? What they were doing? This is the reason why you got old white men on the NFL, because they all look alike. They all do the same thing. They're not going to turn on each other, Charlton. You're talking about one of the elitist social clubs in America that has been allowed with impunity to do whatever they want to do. They own the commissioner. He's their boy.
Yeah.
He works for them. They send him a memo. That's what he answers to. So as you look at this situation with Daniel Snyder and all of what he's done against the alleged situations in Washington, D.C. as far as changing the name, complying with the rest of the league, Charlton. He's done none of that. He stubbed his nose at everything. And you're not going to have decades of women coming out making these allegations one after another. When you had, in 2018, you had 40 women quit the front office of the Washington Redskins because they said it was a toxic sexual environment. 40 women give up their jobs. You think about it. When was the last time you went to work and people said, hey, Charlton, your butt looks real good in those pants. Hey, are those pecs real or are they implants? You think about the things that women have to go through when they go to work, making these undertone sexual hidden comments against them, Charlton. And not just in football, in all workplaces. Those are not allegations. You've seen them. Every man has seen them. Where people have made, asinine comments towards women that have been insensitive to their character.
Not even being, I have been told that my backside looks good, and I never felt that I was threatened to have to pull my pants down. But
was it another guy telling you
No,
that?
it was a woman. Women have done that, and I know.
No. Was it another guy telling you that? Was it a superior in your workplace telling you that? The person who hired you?
Yeah, it was a woman, a white woman. She told me my butt looks good, and she also said you got a nice body. Those things happen. And I'm saying maybe I should go back and file sexual assault charges, to be honest with you. But I didn't feel threatened by it. And I think that's a difference because if we're being candid, I think most people can say, you know what, your hair looks nice. Or you know what, that's a nice looking tie you got on. Or nice looking shoes, I love the shoes. That doesn't mean, hey, you know what, you should go to bed with me if you want to keep your job. So it's the context that something is said. Anyone can be complimented, Big C. But it doesn't mean.
So when you ask a woman, are those real breasts or are those implants? I like how high you got your skirt up. It really shows your butt off real well in the office. I mean, you think about going to work and have to deal in that, Charlton, from a superior, the person who hired you, and you have to sit there and take that because you want to keep your job. You want to be able to pay your bills. And when you have to go under those situations every day, Charlton, it can become quite denigrating.
It can become quite denigrating, and I understand it's about a position of power because everybody loves a compliment. That's why, just a lot of people do. It's nice to be called, hey, that's a nice looking suit, as opposed to, man, that's an ugly suit you're wearing. But everybody has their own thought, and I do want to make sure that we defend women, but at the same time, men can also go through the same harassment. I just thought about it as you asked me. I've even had my butt grabbed, Big C, by someone who hired me.
By a man?
No,
I'm asking you by a man.
No,
we can say these things about a woman, and it's sexual harassment from that perspective also. But when I'm saying you're working in a male-dominated environment as a group of women, and every day you come in, you're hearing these sexual overtones, Charlton, directed at you and other coworkers. This is the reason why they have HR departments. But when the HR department is the person that hired you and making these comments, Charlton, and you know who you complain to. It's just like if the police come into your house, just like when they killed Breonna Taylor back in Louisville, Kentucky. The police walk in and shoot. You're calling the police. They're there, and they don't even respond. This is the same type of thing, Charlton. You're going to complain against the person who hired you and who will fire you the minute you make the complaint.
But I want you to just look at the other side of the room. Because what you asked me a question, yes, it has happened to me. It's happened to other men that I know. And yes, my boss was a Caucasian woman at the time that it happened. It was about 25 years ago. But yes, those sexual overtones, they go on toward men too. And there are times when I worked around a lot of Salesforce, and women put that same pressure on men. Hey, take your shirt off. We want to see your muscles. I never felt like I was threatened, though. That's the difference. And I think men and women can be that way toward other people. But I do want to make sure that people know it happens to men, too. But I got to get your thoughts on this. The NFL have released a statement, and everybody has an old statement. The matter, as reported, is serious, is disturbing, and this is what I want you to pay attention to. It's contrary to the NFL's values. You know, the same one that needs the Rooney Rule, their values are so high. Everyone in the NFL has a right to work in an environment that is free from any and all forms of harassment. They have the Rooney Rule because there is a harassment thing going on, an exclusion in the NFL. Washington has engaged outside counsel to conduct a thorough investigation into these allegations. But I've got to ask your thoughts on this too, and everybody has their own opinion. Here's a league that's saying that bad behavior is contrary to the NFL's values, that's always being begged to give black men a fair chance when it comes to employment. We know what they've done to women as far as the sexual overtures. But the NFL is really a fallacy when they say they have core values. They've let people who've assaulted people back into the league, beaten people up back into the league. Not to make light of it, I think the highest contract for a defensive player, he just got $100 million guaranteed for beating up another man with a helmet. The league has a lot of slippery slope in their own closet, Big C. Your thoughts?
The situation with Myles Garrett is totally different from what we're talking about. What happened with Antonio Brown last year when he was alleged to have sexually assaulted somebody? What happened to him? He got suspended by the league. He got released by a team. We're talking about incidents of the same nature, Charlton. A black man, when he was accused of this, there's no evidence. We had no photographs, no audio recording. In the situation with the Washington Redskins, you have photographs.
Yeah.
You also have audio recordings of what happened down in the Dominican Republic as well as with the photographs, because they took pictures of all these incidents, Charlton. They have pictures of forcing these women to escort these men to an event that evening. So as we look at this, and you look at the standard of the NFL, you're saying you're going to allow the Washington Redskins to investigate themselves. Why the hell didn't the NFL allow Antonio Brown to investigate himself?
Yeah.
Or anybody else, any other player, Charlton, that's been alleged of any incident outside of the operating of the organization? Because all these incidents with players, Charlton, have not been on team facilities. So why didn't they allow them to hire independent investigators to investigate themselves? But here's Daniel Snyder, and everyone knows of Daniel Snyder's background.
Yeah.
You're allowing him to go get his own independent person to investigate what's going on. And most of these people, Charlton, have been fired or retired from the organization. So you're going to say this is something that happened in years past. Tell me what happened with the former owner of the Carolina Panthers, Charlton, when these types of allegations came out against him.
Yeah, but at the same, I'm not trying to defend Daniel Snyder or anybody, but I want to defend people that get accused of things that they had nothing to do. I mean, that's what he's saying. They can have their time in court. But on his side of the fence, why would Daniel Snyder have to lose his organization for something that somebody else did, that allegedly? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, because he's kept these people in his employment for a long time, and they work directly under Daniel Snyder. You're going to tell me that the guy can't hear out of one ear and can't hear out of the other, that he's totally deaf to any situation that goes on in his organization? From top to bottom, you have people, the CEO of a company, who report to you from different angles within the company. They may not report to another person who's reporting to you because they're all independent.
Yeah.
And as much talk that goes on in professional organizations, Charlton, when I was a player decades ago, we knew everything that was going on in the organization. From people being involved in the organization with each other, having affairs.
That's hearsay.
To cheerleaders, to players, to people within management.
Yeah.
All of these things are known. You got to understand, these are small communities. And the minute more than one person knows something, you no longer have a secret. And it's not, and you got to think about it. These allegations have been brought in the papers for over 10 years against this organization, dating back to 2008, Charlton, and I believe Daniel Snyder was owning the team at that point.
Yeah.
So you're going to tell me over the past 12 years that Daniel Snyder has not heard of any of the improprieties that have occurred within the organization?
Well, he's saying no. That's his words is no. If he knew something, he would have done something, and he says he's going to make sure that things are going better going forward.
Doesn't Donald Trump say that all the time? If they're not complying with the rules and regulations of integrity of the league, just like Donald Trump said, this is what the rest of the league should do. Fire the SOB.
Yeah.
Get him out of here. You're fired. That's what happens. Sell your team. Donald Sterling, sell your team. Richardson in Carolina, sell your team. I mean, he shouldn't get anonymity coming to this, Charlton.
Yeah.
He's been complacent and knowledgeable of all this. You can't tell me the man that is a billionaire has not gotten reports of what's going on in his organization in the same office that he's working in.
Yeah. Well, I do understand that Daniel Snyder, just like Donald Trump, they have positions of power. And if you're thinking, because I think he's a horrible guy too, but I also know I don't want to be accused of something that I did not do because of proximity. But if you're asking the other 31 owners of the NFL to call for him to be ousted from the league, and they know birds of a feather flock together, And if he knows anything about some of the other owners, he would also drop down like the snitch hotline they got for the NBA bubble, Big C. No other owner is going to come out and say get rid of this guy because they know they open up their own investigation for their shenanigans too, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, like I said, they call for out the other owners, and all these guys know what each other does.
Yeah,
they do that. This is the reason why they have such exclusivity, and this is the reason why only one representation per team. You don't get two or multiple owners, Charlton, in an organization. It's one independent only.
Yeah.
So that when you're talking, you're the only one talking, and they have history on you. They got a file sitting in front of them of what each other has done since they've come into the league and even before that. So they know which one is wearing pantyhose and which one is wearing a garter belt. So they have all the history on each other.
Yeah.
So they're not just going to turn somebody over because of what they do. Because you got to understand, this goes on in all 32 organizations to some degree.
Yeah.
There's always been an unwritten rule. You're not supposed to interact and cohabitate with somebody within the organization. You sign it just like cheerleaders.
Yeah.
They sign an agreement that they're not supposed to be involved with ball players.
Yeah.
But it always happens, Charlton. Just like in the front office, you sign an agreement that you're not supposed to be involved with each other. You know, relationships don't start in the office and continue in the workplace. So these agreements are signed.
Yeah.
And so you think about the things that these players and cheerleaders have had to go through and office staff. This many women, Charlton, is not lying. You know, to say that you believe Daniel Snyder is like saying you believe everything Donald Trump says.
No, I didn't say I believe Daniel Snyder. I said I don't want to ever be accused of something that I did not do without having due process. Even a guilty man deserves due process. And if he's going to get the due process, it's going to mean that the owners who are doing the same thing have to turn on him. And I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think he's going to give up his team because all of the good boys do the same thing. But with that said, Big C, and it's just my opinion, you think about the NFL in the 2020 season. We have COVID-19. We have players foolishly saying they want to swim in that contaminated swimming pool because guys like Daniel Snyder and Jerry Jones are saying, hey, it's okay to swim in that pool. And then we have a commissioner in Roger Goodell who's doing the best he can, but he's not the owner. He's the commissioner. He has to report whatever them good old boys tell him. I feel for women, but at the same time, every woman, they have the chance to do what is being done now. They have to go get some legal representation, and they got to take their chances in the court because sitting back, closing your eyes, and hoping you keep your job is not good enough, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, many of these women have turned their job down, Charlton. They've walked away from that.
Yeah.
But you think about it, you know, when you're in a situation in the corporate world and you're trying to advance, and these are the obstructions that are hitting you every day straight in the face, Charlton. Yeah. How do you handle that as a person? I don't think there's any classes in college when they were getting their degree to teach them how to deal with sexual harassment and repercussions from that, Charlton.
Yeah.
They don't teach that class in college. So everything that they deal with, Charlton, is in an infantile situation.
Yeah.
Where they're learning and trying to understand it as they go forth. What direction do I turn? Who do I turn to?
Yeah.
What are going to be the repercussions? This person hired me, and if I try to go around them to complain on them, they're going to fire me. And so what do I have to do to keep a roof over my head and food in my belly? Look at what I have to go through every day. And I understand you said you were sexually harassed by guys when you were younger and stuff.
By women.
In a job situation.
By women.
But you got to look at women, what they have to go through society throughout its history, Charlton.
Yeah.
This is, you talk about there's no room for domestic violence, sexual assault every day at the end of our program. This is what they deal with. This is what corporate America has put them under. The pressure of. I mean, you talked about all your friends at Fox Television that had to settle sexual harassment lawsuits from women. That had to, Roger Ailes, when he was running that corporation, Charlton, for decades.
Yeah.
All of what they had to go through. So this is not isolated situations, Charlton. This is daily actment amongst rude, crude males to women all the time. And you can always say that men get sexually harassed. But it's a different tone, Charlton, because that man can physically defend himself. Generally, these women can't.
Yeah, and so I believe that it happens both ways. And that's why we have the court of law. And it doesn't mean you're going to win your case. But for women, the Me Too movement, it calls for women not to be silent. And there are men, too, that happen. I mean, it happens to anybody if you have someone with a position of power over you. And that's what I hate. But unfortunately, court costs a lot of money. but you can go and you got to put your foot forward and do the best you can. And speaking of court, I want to touch on something in the NFL because everybody has their own thoughts about what I'm going to ask you. The NFL, we have two African-American quarterbacks that have captured the media's interest for the past several months, two of them primarily. Dak Prescott for the Dallas Cowboys with his contract dispute. I don't know how it's a dispute when someone gives you $31,400,000. And then Cam Newton, the free agent that they got on minimum wage, $1 million for Cam Newton with a lot of signing bonus opportunities. That's a big slap in the face. That's an insult to Cam. But he got a job. He's going to have to make the most of it. And then you think about some teams, Miami Dolphins, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Jacksonville Jaguars, Carolina Panthers, Atlanta Falcons, New Orleans Saints, Houston Texans, Dallas Cowboys, Arizona Cardinals. You have the LA Chargers, Las Vegas Raiders, and the LA Rams. Big C, how's that all come together for you? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, think about how long we've heard about Dak Prescott's contract in Dallas and how appalling it's been to mainstream media that this black quarterback just won't accept the money that, he should be getting from the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
It should be only what the Dallas Cowboys want to give and not what he demands. I mean, we never heard this type of contract dispute over a white quarterback. I remember when your cousin was going under the franchise
he's not my cousin.
back in Washington.
Yeah.
We never heard this much vitriol from the media about what he was worth and what he was not worth when he got back-to-back franchise tagged by the Washington Redskins.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden when he signed the most lucrative deal all time with the Minnesota Vikings, it was great raise amongst the media. He was a guy who had never won a playoff game, who had only had won 3 games against teams with winning records.
Yeah.
But they're like, wow, he's getting all this money. He's worth every penny. And Dak Prescott still is a thorn in the media side now because he would not sign the contract that Dallas wanted to offer him.
Yeah.
He wanted a shorter-term contract for the same amount of money. We look at Cam Newton and the Carolina Panthers, how they did an injustice to him, holding him, Charlton, till all of free agency was over and not allowing him to go out there and test the market and get a better contract.
Yeah.
And now that he's now with the New England Patriots, everybody's sitting there talking about, Tom Brady's in Tampa. Cam Newton is not thinking about Tom Brady. And when you look at the New England Patriots, Charlton, Josh McDaniels, who's the offensive coordinator, was the head coach with the Denver Broncos when he drafted Tim Tebow.
Yeah.
He is now going to be able to do some of the things in New England that he did in Denver with Tim Tebow, the mobility. And you think about Tim Tebow was nowhere near the quarterback that Cam Newton is. But if he can make Tim Tebow successful in the NFL and get to a playoff and win a game, think about the expertise he has from Cam Newton, a guy who's been the MVP in the Super Bowl, who was one of the best athletes in the entire NFL, Charlton. And so the media is obsessed with wanting both of these quarterbacks to fail. Think about that. You hear no negativity about any white quarterback in the NFL right now. But you hear nothing but negativity about Cam Newton, Dak Prescott. Well, Dak Prescott is not worth it. Well, they're getting Cam Newton real cheap. They're not going to keep him 2 years.
Yeah.
They're going to use him and spin him off.
Yeah.
But to go back to another point you made, Charlton, after talking about those quarterbacks, and you named off all those cities.
Yeah.
There's one thing I want you to help me keep count on, okay, on those cities you named.
Yeah.
And states. You talked about California. Now, and I believe California has 3 NFL teams now?
Yep, 3.
That's 3. Got Arizona. They have, what, 1?
Yep.
We're up to 4. We go to Texas. They got 2. So we got 6.
Yep.
We look at Louisiana. They got 1. That's 7.
Yep.
We look at Georgia. They got 1. That's 8.
That's 8.
We look at Carolina. They got 1. That's 9. We look at Florida. They got 3. That's 10.
Yeah.
Today, Charlton, the United States went over 78,000 positive COVID tests. And they're led by those states, Charlton. Those are the hottest states in the country as far as the rise of COVID-19.
Wow.
Now, we know that basketball has a bubble down in Orlando that players are constantly sneaking out of and going home,
all
coming
the time.
up with various reasons.
Yep.
They don't want to play. Just tell them they don't want to play. But if they say health reasons, then they don't have to lose their money.
Yeah.
But when you think about the NFL, and you talked about it briefly in our opening, what is the safety plan that the NFL has for their players? You talked about the number yesterday. I believe it was 72 NFL
72
players
as of
tested
yesterday.
positive
Yeah.
for COVID-19. You have 11 teams. Now, how many teams is in the NFL? 32?
32.
So over a third of the NFL teams, Charlton, are in the hottest COVID-19 states in the United States.
Yeah.
And the NFL has no safety plan to help these players. They have no quarantine regimen. They have no testing regimen in place. And think about it. Rookies start reporting tomorrow, Charlton. Tomorrow is the first day of reporting for rookies. And the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl champions, rookies will report on Monday. And the veterans will all report by Friday, Charlton. So as we look at the reporting of all the NFL players over the next 7 days, what is the NFL going to do as COVID-19 becomes rampant throughout training camp?
Well, we'll take the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. And when we come back, I'm going to give you my opinion of what the NFL is going to do to keep players safe. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify, and a lot of good applications out there as we're growing with Big C Sports. I think when you ask the question, why can't the NFL owners come up with a realistic safety plan to protect the players? And, maybe some people say they don't give a darn about it, Big C. They just want the TV money. Well, everybody knows that. But it's almost, I want to ask you this question. If I were to take you up to a 50-story tall high-rise overlooking the San Francisco Bay, and I say, I'm going to give you $1 million if you jump off of this building, would you jump or would you choose to save your life, Big C? Your thoughts?
I'm going to take the elevator back down.
That was not a suggestion, Big C. You either jump or you don't jump. And no one's making these grown men decide to play a game. J.J. Watt came out and was asking something that I thought was a good question, but it's a foolish question for a grown man to ask. You have your own doctor, and no doctor would say, hey, take the same medicine that we prescribe to your teammates. No person in a household would say, hey, take the same medicine that your spouse is taking. You got to take the one that your doctor says you need to take. So when people want to give up their power and decide that it's dangerous, but I'm going to do what you tell me because I want the money so bad, at some point in time, you got to quit blaming the owners who are saying jump off of that high-rise, Big C. Your thoughts?
Yeah, but I want to make the owners responsible for the actions of their players, Charlton, if they're not salient enough to understand what's going on. I want the owners to take responsibility to say, I care enough about you as people that I am not going to put you in harm's way.
Yeah.
Because we don't have a solution for this pandemic that's going on. It's our responsibility to be responsible for our employees. If you were to walk into an office place, Charlton, and they had donuts, okay, and these donuts, half of them have been laced with some type of carcinogenic, Charlton.
Yeah.
And they say, okay, take a risk. You choose one. If you get one without it, you'll be okay. If you get one with it, you're going to you have to be rushed to the hospital. And the owner is the one who brought them in, Charlton. But you're an employee that wants to keep your job. And so you have to take one of the donuts or quit without any pay or ever future employment. Those are the type of situations that these players are looking at. They're looking for the adult in the room, which should be the owner that is covering for Daniel Snyder. That's what they're looking for. And as an employer and being responsible for other human being lives, Charlton, you should do that sometimes.
Yeah.
You should do that.
Yeah.
To say, I understand I'm going to take a loss of financial, but I'm not willing to take a loss of life for my employees.
Well, if a player's that dumb that he won't consult his own doctor, you can't help everybody, Big C. Some people, you just can't help them. They won't listen to their doctor. They'll listen to a snake oil salesman, and sometimes they say that the strong shall survive. Well, also the informed shall survive. I don't think any person, just like we talked about the sexual assault thing that's going on, is rampant really in all of society. Women are assaulted every 20 seconds in the United States of America. Every 20 seconds in the United States. And I don't know what to do about that other than say, if it happens to you, call 911. But we cannot expect a grown man who tells you it's like telling the pimps should never put their prostitutes in harm's way, they should care about their prostitutes. Those prostitutes making them money. The pimp doesn't care about the prostitute. He'll fire one and draft another one, Big C. At some point in time, that prostitute or that athlete, instead of jumping off of that building or playing in harm's way, they owe it to themselves to stay alive, not give all their power to some owner. It takes a grown-up to do that, but that's what I advocate for. If someone says go out and walk in front of this in the middle of the street with your eyes closed because I'm your owner, it's up to the intelligent person to say, no, I'm not going to do it, and the owners cannot make people do what they choose not to do. Big C, your thoughts?
But don't you think that Colin Kaepernick drew the line in the sand for athletes, Charlton, when he took a stance against the owners and American society, and the owners stood in unity and said, we're not going to have this. We're not going to let an individual or individuals outpower us. We own this situation. You operate under our auspices, under our laws.
Yeah.
What we say governs everything. And so if you're not going to do what we tell you to do, don't ever worry about working in this entity again called the NFL.
Okay, but men, if they're dumb enough to put their lives on the line, Big C, I don't want to put my life in the hands of another person unless it's my doctor, and I'll take my medical doctor's advice, and I don't want to let men off the hook for that. But if they think, hey, I can't not do it, Massa say I got to go out and do it, Massa say there's no other place I can get work, I just never want to believe that someone's going to control my life. But I want to go, man, our show is going by way too fast.
Well, I'm going to ask you this question. If you had a $5 to $10 million guaranteed contract that you would not report to training camp?
If you want to die, and if doctor's telling you that you have pre-existing, I'm asking you a question.
Yes or no question.
I'm asking you a question.
Or would you not report to training camp? Forget about what the doctor said. If you had a $10 million guaranteed contract, would you report to training camp? Yes or no?
I'm not a dumb person, so I don't give a yes or no answer to a question that's simplistic, Big C. Like I just said, every doctor will tell each patient what medication they need to be on. You can't go home and take the same medication your spouse is taking. You can't take the medication your teammate is taking. If a doctor that keeps you alive is saying that you have a pre-existing condition, like the WNBA player Della Donna, and she's saying she doesn't want to because she has a pre-existing condition, at some point in time, you got to ask yourself the question, are you willing to die for some money that you won't even be able to experience? My answer is no. I'm going to do what it takes to stay alive. That's my opinion. Some guys would choose to die, Big C. Everybody's different, Big C. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that's the answer that I was looking for. You answered the question.
Some guys would choose to die, and they do it all the time because they won't trust science. But I also want to get to this because maybe, just maybe, and how sometimes the universe will answer questions. I've been hoping, because I'm in the same situation with my own son. NCAA college football is called the CAA, the Colonial Athletic Association. They announced that it will not have fall football season. So that's a good thing, and my heart's happy for that. Just because I know there's a lot of parents just like me, and I'm asking your question on more than one question. I do not want my child to participate in an environment that the medical doctor says is not safe. I don't care what the school says. I don't care what they say. Because if you die or if you have lifelong complications, when the doctor says don't take that medicine or don't be in that environment, there's no price of money in the world that's worth it, Big C. But the CAA, they're putting their season on pause until 2021. And they don't even make $10 million a year, and they're doing it because of science, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, they take all the smaller conferences are taking a turn away from the Power 5. You look at the ACC, they came out and said, well, players are going to have to test 72 hours prior to a game, so they're going to have to test Thursday and hopefully have the test back.
Yeah.
But what are they going to do throughout the week? You're just only going to test the players on Thursday? You're not going to be concerned about them from Sunday through Wednesday? That's just showing the lack of empathy towards the players, that the human body does not matter, that the athlete is only there as a way station to make cash.
Yeah. I told you a story. When I was growing up, I knew a madam, and she would have girls that came and worked for her and make money. She'd give them a cut, and she'd keep them. She was a madam. She had dates set up for men who were looking for some love or whatever they were getting with them. Like Donald Trump knows what I mean, he and Stormy Daniels. And so men had to pay for the intercourse they wanted to have with these women. Now, everyone said, that madam, you shouldn't be doing that to those girls. You shouldn't do it. That madam sent her kids to college. And it's a shame that some women decided to do it anyway. They felt they were safe. there's a thing called brothels in Las Vegas. And no matter what someone's thought about it is, I know a pastor friend that's down in Las Vegas of all places. And he talks about wanting to go by and pray on some of these women to get them out of that business. I say, well, why would you be in that business praying on those people? There's a lot of other people that could use your help. But he feels is a moral whatever reason to try to get people not to do what he thinks is detrimental to their health. But you can't tell grown people what to do. You can tell them, but they're going to do it anyway. That makes sense, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you can, Charlton. If you're a league and you stand by your players, you can say, we're not going to play. We're going to cancel. That is telling grown people what to do. But as we look around the professional league in America, the NBA bubble in Orlando, all these players showing up, all these players sticking out, breaking the rules of the bubble, having a snitch line, which I'm concerned when's the bubble is going to break. That's what I'm thinking about. I look at baseball.
Yeah.
What's the protocol in baseball? I mean, you can't play baseball without touching the ball.
Yeah.
Several people on every play, Charlton. So cross-contamination from the baseball. We look at football. There's no way you can play football without passing passages. You put on a face mask.
Yeah.
And I wonder if everybody understands physics, Charlton. There is a reservoir in your body that pulls all the fluid into it. It's called your kidneys, Charlton.
Yeah.
So every bit of fluid that's dispersed from your body comes from your kidneys. Whether it's the spit, whether it's the sweat, whether it's the urine, it all passes through the kidney. So it's all one form of liquid that comes out of your body that creates the passages. So the same passages that come out of your mouth are going to be the same passages that are on your skin from your sweat. So people need to understand that. They need to learn some anatomy and physiology. Okay, Charlton?
Yeah.
Basketball is going to do that. Baseball, football, MLS, soccer, all these passages are going to pass back and forth. And look at hockey. With all the spit, everybody in hockey spits on the ice.
Yeah.
Slams into each other, spit on each other. So as we talk about protecting athletes, there's nothing about protecting athletes in a return to sports, Charlton.
Yeah.
None whatsoever. It's about protecting the TV revenue.
And if an athlete knows that and they're willing to put their lives on the line, that's their fault, Big C. That's just my opinion. Major League Baseball, Yasiel Puig, he tests positive for COVID-19. He was going to sign with the Atlanta Braves, but they love him so much. They told him, come on down to Atlanta. We think you can help us in the outfield. You can also help us at the plate. We love you. We want to come in and make you part of the family. Well, he tested positive for COVID-19, so now he will not be signing with the Atlanta Braves. At some point in time, grown men got to take their lives into their own hands and stop letting other people push them off the edge of the cliff. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you look at Atlanta, Charlton. Atlanta, in Georgia, is one of the hottest states in the country as far as the rebirth of this COVID-19. So you got a guy that tests positive. You're talking about bringing him down to an organization that's had several players already test positive for COVID-19, Charlton. They knew from the start that wasn't going to work. Yeah,
they knew it wasn't going to work. So when people say, I love you like a son, we want to bring you in and treat you like the family, and then something happens, they go, hey, we got to cut you. In fact, we're not even going to sign your contract. 5 more Major League Baseball players, they test positive for COVID-19, and that brings that total to about 80 as far as I know, Big C. And when you think about it, Major League Baseball and the Players Association said that 6 of 10,548 samples were new positives in the week ending on yesterday. So they're saying they're okay. To me, it may seem silly, but I'll never forget when I went to college. Our coaches told us for the young boys that are at college, you want to go out and get an STD checkup at the clinic. It was free. And so they encouraged everybody to go get their STD checkup. And some guys found that they had a little itch, and so they got a medicine for it, make it go away. But it did not stop them from playing sports. They kept believing they could get through with it. And unfortunately, Big C, I think that same mentality is present with COVID-19. They're trying to treat it like an STD. They'll take a pill or it'll go away in a couple of days. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is a problem with lack of education amongst a lot of professional athletes. When we look at the leagues that we're talking about now, Charlton, how many of these players had college degrees? How many of these players spent 4 years in college?
Yeah.
And I think that stunts a lot of these players as far as them understanding where this disease really is.
Yeah, I think you're right, Big C. And I know you always say it's up to the parents and the parents' responsibility to take care of their children and make sure their children are not putting themselves in harm's way, to make sure their children get an education. And I believe that too. At the same time, when I went off to college, I didn't have my parents come to college with me. it was for the first time in my life I was alone. And all I could do was call back on, number one, the grace of God and the parenting that I was given growing up. So when I was on my own, it was no longer up to my parents to make sure that I walked the straight line. It was up to me. And even to this day, it's up to me. And I think for every player, whether it's a woman or a man, no matter what sport it is, every single person has to get educated for themselves and speak to their medical doctors. And that will keep them alive a lot longer than a team saying, come on, just like the pimps tell the prostitutes, go out there and get that money, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, things have changed a lot from those days. When I went to school, Charlton, they didn't have cell phones. You know, we had to go to the athletic director's office, the coach's office,
yeah.
You know, to the secretary's office to be able to call home once a week. We just didn't have the privileges that kids have now. They didn't have exposure. There was no such thing as cable television.
Yeah.
So what kids get their information from now? And the major thing, there was no internet.
Yeah.
So kids have greater access now, Charlton, to anything that we ever saw when I was growing up and young.
Yeah.
So they have a lot greater chance to have education more than what we did, you know, given to them where we had to work for it.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, that's thing. It's technology. It changes. But the thing that never changes is taking responsibility for yourself. Like my doctor tells me, Charlton, now that we get your blood pressure in a good range, 120 over 80, 118 over 78, it's up to you to take the medicine. I can't come force feed it to you, and that's a good thing that's helped me. I think other people can learn from that. College football, North Carolina head coach, one of your friends, Big C, his name is Macaroni Cheese Brown. He went on the Paul Feinbaum show, one of your good old friends down south, and he was stating that college football needs a commissioner. Needs a commissioner for what, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, college football needs a commissioner, Charlton, is a bunch of BS to start with. You know, when you look at that, Charlton, they're already taking all the money from the kids. The kids have no right.
Yeah.
And so what do you need a commissioner for? To tell the teams that they're doing a good job and screwing over the kids? No, Charlton. I mean, Mac Brown is lost it a little bit when it comes to talking about that. You have no governing body of the NCAA. Mark Emmert. You know, what's a commissioner going to do beyond what Mark Emmert has done?
Right.
He can't get it right. So how are you going to pay somebody else a greater salary than what you pay him to take advantage of the kids?
Yeah, they're gonna have them come in and take more money. That's what they're gonna do. You know, one thing that I want to bring up, because I think it happened in Minnesota in the wake of the George Floyd murder, Big C, in Minneapolis. You know, I think Minnesota decided to have their own security and not have the city police. But how, in your opinion, how should college and professional teams look at now using, I guess, off-duty police officers and security at their events, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is something that seriously needs to be addressed in the Black Lives Movement. I know the University of Minnesota is not going to use off-duty police officers anymore as far as security on campus, Charlton. And so other states, I feel, should follow that, Charlton, because you have to give a fair chance for employment for a lot of other people. Think about opportunities for jobs that you're going to take that you'll give to security companies, Charlton, that are certified to come in and do the same thing. You don't need to bring in a guy, Charlton, that's off-duty that's going to really exert himself beyond what the necessitated need to restrain somebody or get somebody moving along, Charlton.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys, when they're off-duty, still think that they're on duty and have that same autonomy. So the public is truly not safe all the time.
Yeah, not safe all the time. There's a player for the Milwaukee Bucks. I think it's Middleton. I'm not sure, but I think it's Chris Middleton that tested positive for COVID-19. And there were some people that were saying that he was down in the bubble. So whether you're hiring police security or you're getting your own private security, that's something they try to keep a grip on. But you were just asking me earlier about players going into a bubble and owners not caring. I've always said, like my doctor tells me, you're responsible for your life. You're the only one that can make decisions for your life. So when Milton, I think Milton tests positive for COVID-19, and I think they had James Harden. I don't know if he tested positive, but he's back down there, and he's okay to play in the bubble. I think Westbrook is still on the mend. But there's another player. If you get COVID-19 in Milwaukee, that's not one of the hardest hit states in Wisconsin. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's one of the least reported states in the country.
Yeah.
You have to understand, your president last week in a press conference said, well, if we test half the people that we're testing, then the test should go down.
Wow.
And if we test half of those people, then the positive test should go down. What the president doesn't understand, Charlton, when he's talking about that,
Yeah.
the U.S. right now, Charlton, the positive rate is going up higher than the amount of people tested. So if you're testing people in the United States at a 15% percentage every day,
Yeah.
and the positive tests are coming back at a 37% rate, what doesn't correlate with what he said?
Yeah.
It means that the people are positive, and you haven't even gotten to enough of them. But with him getting all the information directed from the CDC,
Yeah.
bypassing them, going to the White House now, you watch come August, you watch how big a dip the COVID-19 positive test will take in the United States.
Yeah, they're not going to show all the numbers when it comes to that. But again, everybody has to go to their own doctors and figure out. Would you believe whether you're talking about players in the NBA bubble, and if someone tests positive, they decide, hey, they're going to take their chances. Soccer in Paraguay, Big C, is on pause because 3 teams have tested positive for COVID-19. Unlike the NBA or the NFL, they're stopping the league when it happens overseas. It seems like the American Sports League, it's all about the mighty dollar, we know that, and the ego behind it. But one thing the owners are doing that maybe people don't get, the owners are not going into the bubble. The owners are not gearing up to play football. They're not gearing up to play baseball. They're not gearing up to play basketball. They're just like the pimps that I knew growing up. They never met the John. They sent women out to meet the John. All they did was collect the money when the women brought the money back to them. So they don't see a problem with COVID-19. It's not going to affect them. They're not the one doing the dirty work, if that makes sense to you, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, how many of those owners in Paraguay you think they know Donald Trump compared to the owners in the American League?
Yep. That's very true. And so at some point in time, I would just say to every grown man, but you know what? A lot of these guys, they have that mentality, Big C, that they're invincible. Even J.J. Watt, who I think he has a brother, he has 2 brothers that play pro ball, I believe. But when you have access to the NFL and the doctors that come with the NFL, access to the NBA and the medical doctors that come with the NBA, you don't need one person telling you what to listen to. Listen to your own medical doctor. I implore people to do that because that can keep people safe if they care about it. But as you know,
yeah, but they did have one person they listened to when the NBA shut down. Who said that the NBA was shutting down? Who made that announcement?
That was Adam Silver, I believe.
And when Major League Baseball delayed the start of the season, who made that announcement?
I believe that was Manfred.
Okay, so there is one person that they've all listened to. When the NHL shut down, who made that announcement?
But that's
Gary Bettman.
Yeah.
So as you look at that and say one person making the decision, yes, it was one person saying, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, but that's
and when we've come back with the start of these seasons.
Yeah.
It's been one person saying that this is what we're going to do. Adam Silver said we're going to the bubble in Orlando.
Yeah.
Gary Bettman said, we're eventually going to get started. Rob Manfred said we're going to start baseball a week from today.
Yeah.
So it has been one person that they've listened to and made that announcement.
Well,
you have to understand these are very narrow fraternities that these people get into. If these guys who have made the announcement said that we're going to cancel the season, don't you think the season would be canceled?
Yeah, but I remember when I was growing up, I knew I had good and bad influences, Big C. There was a couple of guys I was around one time, and they had the bright idea that they wanted to rob a bank. And, they were going to rob the bank because they had a lot of money inside the bank. And I told them, hey, get me out of this car. I have nothing to do with you guys. I was done. Some of those knuckleheads tried to do some stupid stuff anyway. I don't think they robbed the bank. But I had the choice to make to get out of that car and not be with them. And if these NFL or NBA players, if they're that dumb, then sometimes hard luck is you can learn the hard way or the easy way. You can't keep putting the safety of yourself in the hands of somebody else. I mean, you just can't expect the best to happen. That has to make sense, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it has to make sense, but it doesn't always make sense, Charlton. Like I said earlier, these players are looking what Colin Kaepernick went through when he turned against the owners, as everybody said, when he chose a different path of talking about saving other American lives. Wouldn't that be the same if players said, we're going to opt out of this because we're going to look at the American end of this and saving lives. We're going to look at the societal end of this and saving lives. That's basically what Colin Kaepernick's message was, Charlton, about social injustice. That's what COVID-19 is. When you're forcing somebody to go to work, social injustice. You think about these NFL players having options. Think about the school kids, K through 12, Charlton, who don't have this option that the president is trying to force these kids back to school in COVID-infested environments, saying that it's safe and they'll be okay. Think about all the instructors, Charlton, that they're telling them if they don't go back to work, they're not going to be able to get unemployment. So this is the situation that people are in as a society. Even though we talk about athletes who make millions, think about the school teachers who don't, and the school kids that don't get a damn dime.
Yeah, well, some people objected. They objected to the Vietnam War, and they had to pay some price, whatever it is. But again, everybody has to do what they want to do, Big C. Before we close, because you can talk about people having to make their own choices. I think this happened in Georgia. If a white governor files a lawsuit against a black mayor, is that systemic racism or is it sexism? It could be both. I know Keila Lance Bottoms, I think she was sued by the governor of Georgia, I believe. And some people say it's racism, some people say it's sexism. It could be both. But she still has to do what she feels is right, irrespective of what the opposition says. Big C, your thoughts?
It's systemic racism, Charlton. Governor Kemp in Georgia filed a lawsuit against Keisha Lance Bottoms, the mayor of Atlanta, an African-American woman. And she was not the first mayor in Georgia, Charlton, to mandate face masks. You got to think about the mayor in Savannah, Georgia, the mayor in Augusta, Georgia, the mayor in Athens, Georgia, which is Kemp's hometown, and another mayor, Charlton, in Georgia, mandated face masks. They were all white mayors, Charlton, white men, all right? Keisha Lance Bottoms mandated face masks in the city of Atlanta, which has over 130 positive COVID-19 cases in that city. Even her family, all of them tested positive. Her husband and her 4 children tested positive for COVID-19. So she understands the need to wear masks, Charlton. She put in the mandate. But this aristocratic white man, Charlton, said, no, I'm not going to let a black woman dictate what the politics in this state is as far as saving lives when I don't feel it's important. It's racist. It had nothing to do with sexist because there were 4 other white mayors who had the same mandate in place before she put hers in place.
Well, she can maybe countersue him too. It's a crazy world, Big C, and sometimes you got to have thick skin to be in those positions of power. I also found out too, back to the NBA before we close up, NBA basketball, LA Clippers, Montrezl Harrell, he also got smart, and he did what I'm saying people got to do. He's leaving the bubble for family reasons, just like Zion Williamson left for family reasons. A lot of dumb guys won't leave because they say, I don't know how to make choices for myself. I got to do what Massa says. Even if medical science is saying you can put your whole family in peril, but some guys refuse to take responsibility for themselves. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. Big C, before we close, again, take responsibility for yourself. Everybody, there's always, like I tell my son, when you go off to college, you really are on your own. I'm here as much as I can be. Don't do drugs. Don't go out and rob anybody. Don't do anything stupid. Don't drink and drive. At some point in time, you can't blame me, or you can't blame the person that's telling you to do something stupid. You and that person in the mirror is responsible for your life. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, we always have to be responsible for our lives and take all meaningful efforts to stay safe every day in America. Sometimes it's easier for some people than it is for others. And when you're stuck with economic strife, Charlton, which many of these athletes are claiming, this is the choice that they're making, economics over science, because they feel that they have enough money and enough doctors on staff to hopefully pull them through or keep them safe. They have a greater advantage over the general public in the United States, Charlton, because the medical assistance is always immediately there for them.
It's all about freedom. We say we want freedom of choice. You want to be a man? You want to be a woman? Sometimes you got to make tough choices. It's not a tough choice when you choose your health over anything that threatens your health. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, by the next time we come on air, we'll have NFL training camps that have opened up, and we will see the first look at what players looking like and what they're having to deal with in going into camp. Also, baseball starts a week from today. And once again, I want to say thank you to those frontline healthcare workers, the nurses, doctors, first responders. I know the struggle that you go through every day in trying to save American lives from this horrific disease of a COVID-19. Please stay strong.
Stay strong and keep hope alive. You can keep hope alive, too, every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.